Hello everyone, my name's Andy, the product trainer here at Vision 6 in Brisbane. Thanks for joining today's Vision 6 Power Session, Capture and Segment Data with Forms. If you're new to our series of Power Sessions, we do have a couple of new users on the line by the look of it. They're short and sharp sessions designed to let you learn something new and then get straight back on with your day. So they're very feature focused. And you can ask questions at any time during the session by clicking on that Q&A panel or the chat panel that you see in your Zoom window when you would have first joined, and just type your questions in there at any time as soon as you think of them. And then at the end of the session, I'll be running through the questions, if any, with everyone so you can hear the question and the answer. So using forms for data segmentation, let's have a look at what we'll cover today. So what we're going to do is we're going to build a form in Vision 6, add some fields to it, design the layout and set some of the different options on the form, and then use that to gather data for personalization and segmentation. Because at the end of the day, segmentation works if we have data to segment by. So why should we segment? What will the benefits be for us? Well, it means your content is more personalized with pretty much very little extra effort to get it to do so. And personalized emails are always going to be more engaging and will convert better than a generic email. And by personalization, it can be something as simple as putting the person's first name in the subject line. That generally is pretty much guaranteed to get a better open rate just simply by doing that one thing. But it can be a bit more than that as well. It can be changing the content within the message of your email. It can be having different wording on the button depending on contacts' behavior, their names, and any other data you might have for them. It also means you can make use of our powerful conditional content feature, which we covered in a previous Power session. But I will show you in a few moments what conditional content can do and how personalization can work for us in terms of segmentation. It also means your automations can become much more powerful as well, particularly if you're using our advanced automations in Vision 6, which allow you to add filtering to your automations as well. And of course, with the data available to you, that's how you can achieve that. An example there might be, let's say you're running an event in the platform, EMSA, for example, a good example of an event we're running. What you could do is, if it were an event that has an in-person component, with an automation, what you could do is for anyone attending the event in person who might be located in Brisbane where the event is, for example, what you could do is then have an email go out the day before, providing all the information as to where the event is, the local train station, where the nearest parking is, and that type of thing. However, if the person's joining the webinar, joining the session online through a webinar, because maybe they're based somewhere else in Australia, you could have an automation go out half an hour before the event with a reminder and a link where they can join that event. And by knowing where the contacts are coming from, what state they're in, whether they're attending in person or online, you can then change your emails and change the automations as a result of that to become much more powerful. Just on that, I'll show you an example of conditional content, and it's data that we're using to drive this. So if we have a look at this little email here that I've got set up in Vision 6, I'm just going to zoom out a little bit so you can see some of the email in full here. So as I scroll through my contacts up here, you'll notice that the store map is changing because we know where our contacts are based. So that's data that's driving that. And for some of our contacts, I can see here, let's flick through some of these. Oh, sorry, I better change my list. Sorry, wrong list. You can see that some of our contacts here are actually gluten-free. So we're, again, personalizing this exact same one copy of the email with wording, a different photo, different text down here. Even our call to action on our button changes. If the person's gluten-free, it shows their name there, as well as in the introduction and in the subject line here. So as I flick through my contacts, you can see, even though this is the same email, it's changing for my different people, my different contacts based on the data we have for them. And it's segmentation that allows us to do this. If we've got some data available that we can segment on or with, then you can see how powerful this can be to make very personalized emails with that data that's driving that for us. So when we talk about segmentation, one of the main things it lets us do is not only sort our contacts into different groups, we can then use that to personalize our emails, which is the key here, because personalized emails will deliver 6 times higher transaction rates than a generic email. And targeted emails, which are segmented, generally are found to generate 58% of all of the revenue versus emails that are standard ones and generic ones as well. And according to various reports, and all the sources are listed at the bottom there, Marketers generally will see an increase of 20% in sales when using personalized experiences, and emails can form a part of that journey. And personalized call to actions convert more than 200% better than default call to actions. And by call to action, it's generally the driver as to what the email will get the contact to do. In this case, our primary call to action is this button here to get them to go and buy some donuts from us here at XYZ Donuts. And this call to action is personalized. It shows the person's name and their dietary, if any, as well, to make that very personalized to their needs. So how can we segment? Well, the general way to do this is to use fields to store data, and then we use that data to segment. In the case of the email example I just showed you before, you've got the person's state, so we know if they're in Queensland, Victoria, New South Wales, etc., which then drives the different store maps that they will see in their version of the email. And the other one we had was the person's dietary there. We had the parts or the offer was changing in the email to say, well, we've got discount gluten-free donuts if you're gluten-free. If you're not gluten-free, then it showed a different offer instead. So by adding fields at the time of import, that's one way you can segment contacts. You can also put or ask additional questions on your subscription form and use that data for segmenting as well, which we'll go through shortly. And of course, you can allow contacts to update their profiles at any time using a link in your email footer or even in the message body itself. And the update profile form is a great form in Vision 6 for people who are already on your list, because what that form will do is allow them to change the information you have on file about them. Maybe they've moved states and you want them to be able to change that. The update profile form is a great way to do that. So let's jump straight into Vision 6, and we will customize a form design. We'll add a field onto it as well and change the visual appearance of the form in Vision 6. And this is a great way to start with segmentation, because if you don't know the person's state or dietary, there's no point importing it into Vision 6 because they're just going to be blank fields. So a subscription form, the form that people use generally to join your list in the first place, is a great place to start by adding some additional fields for segmentation purposes. So I've just jumped into Vision 6 here, I've got lists and forms open, and I'm going to double click on my customers list, and that will then show all of the forms attached to my list. By default, you always get the standard 4 subscriptions form, a preferences form, there's the update profile form, and of course the unsubscribe form. So if you've ever wondered where the contacts go when they click that unsubscribe button in the bottom of your email, they will go to the unsubscribe form attached to that list. So this is where you can change what it says. But in our case, we're going to be adjusting the subscription form. So this is it at the moment, fairly basic, has a few bits and pieces there. And at the moment on the right-hand side, it shows all of the different fields that we have on our list. So at the moment, we have these 15 or so odd fields here on our list, and not all of them are being exposed to the subscription form, because some of them, such as NPS score, what did we do well, what could we do better, those sort of NPS style questions, they're not going to be on a subscription form because the person who's subscribing to your list might want to fill that stuff in. That we will use for a different form, for a different purpose, because you can add additional forms here, and that's where you'd make a separate survey form or something like that to send to your customers. But for the purposes of today, what we're going to do is customize our subscription form, and I'm just going to turn off the last name. We don't really want that on our form. We do want, let's pop in there the interests. So what are our customers interested in? We'll have the first name and the email address there as well, and the state. Let's make the first name mandatory. So I'll click on that field and you can make that mandatory. Email, we pretty much should have that mandatory because otherwise they won't be able to contact us, or rather we won't be able to contact them. So I'm just going to adjust that as well. I might adjust the label position here to put that above the field itself, just to change the design. So on the right-hand side, when you're clicked onto a field, this is where you get all of your different options and things like that as well. Now, I'd like to also ask the person's dietary. So I'm going to add a new field to the form because we don't currently have a dietary field on this particular list. So I'll press Add New Field. And here's where we have all the different types of fields we can choose from. There's some preset ones like country and state and those kind of things. And these ones are pre-filled with all the countries around the world as well. So it saves you some time there as well. Industry, all the common industries are located in there as well. But if you wanted to start with a sort of standard custom field, all these ones are blank. So in my case, people can have multiple dietary requirements. They could be vegetarian and gluten-free, for example. So if I use a radio button, which is where they can only select one thing from a list of items, that may not work because, again, if you're vegetarian and gluten-free, you can't choose both. So a checkbox in my case is the type of field I'm going to choose because it allows people to select more than one answer. We can then give it a name, so dietary, and down here we can pop our values. So I might just put in there gluten-free, add a new one, and maybe make another one here, paleo or something like that, keto. You could keep going and adding all sorts of different fields in there, and we'll press save to add that to our list. And of course, it's also added to our forms, our form rather. So we can drag any of these fields around to rearrange them as well. Now, as you'll see in a moment, I've got some form design tips. One of them is less is more. It's a good tip. People aren't going to want to answer 20 questions just to subscribe to your newsletter. It's hard enough to get them to subscribe to your newsletter at most of the time anyway. So adding or asking them many questions may not work in your favor. But what you can do is just make a couple of key fields mandatory, as you can see here, and the rest optional. That way, if they want to fill it in, they can. You can, of course, on our form design here, add additional components to your form, such as a paragraph, which pops that in there. So what I could do is maybe underneath the mandatory fields, I could have some information in there just talking about why this information is handy to have. So I'm just going to come in here, add that new text field, and then I might put in here, setting the information below allows us to personalize your discounts and offers. So you've got some information there available to sort of say why you're asking for that information, and sometimes putting an extra little tip in there like that will in the customer's mind, it will go, oh, okay, no worries. Okay, I'm going to get better offers if they know what state I'm in because I'll get offers for my local stores or something like that. We can also then in the design section here come in and make some changes to our form. So I might just match the branding with our XYZ Donuts branding, just to use this purple color here. And I can then go through and just sort of adjust all of the fields as required to come in here. And you can also, when you're in this area, this is where you can add in images such as the company logo. I might pop that in that section there using the add image box, which is this one here. And then we can then go through and put in some information. Subscribe to receive the latest deals and offers. And we can then go and just make the standard adjustments there as required. So make the text a bit bigger, make it a heading, that kind of thing. There we go. So we've now got a good looking form. We can delete fields if we don't want them. We can, with the submit button, we can change that to say something else like sign up. We can center it, change the font size, the color, all these sorts of things you can do with the form to really make it look nice and match your branding and that type of thing as well. We do have a thank you page as well, which is what the person will get, what shows up on the screen once they finish subscribing. So you could say thank you for submitting or thank you for subscribing or something like that as well in there. So there's our nice looking form design that we have that we've just created there. So a quick few form design tips before we go on to how we can use the new data to segment. Less is more, as I said. So if you do have a long form, make the fields optional and just have a couple of key ones that are the required fields. That will generally work in your favor. Select the right type of form as well. We have 4 different form types in the platform. So when you go and add a new form, obviously once you save those changes, it'll ask you which of the 4 form types to use. We do have a help article which outlines in details what the different form types are, but they're generally the 4 you can see here. Subscription form is used to join your list. So if you want someone to be added to your list, subscription form type is the way to go. Update profile is used for existing contacts to update this information. So if I am already a member of your list and I come to the update profile form, generally through a link in your email, that's where I can change my first name, my email, my preferences, my interests, my state. So basically all the data I already have is shown to the user when they load the update profile form. That's where they can add to it or change the information on file using an update profile form. Unsubscribe, of course, self-explanatory, that's how they leave your list. And preferences, if you're using the preferences function in Vision 6, that's where you can allow the user to change their preferences. An example of that would be you could have a preference called marketing emails, one could be sales emails, one could be newsletters and generic content, and the person can choose what types of emails they receive from you using that preferences function there. Don't forget to also customize the thank you page as I showed you before. That's the little sub-tabs that appear down here. There's a thank you page which you can customize. And finally there, if you're using an update profile form, we do have an option available to skip the login on those forms. We're going to have another power session at a later date to cover update profile forms. But essentially what you can do is if the person has clicked through from an email, you can set it so that they skip the login because the system already knows who they are based on that special personalized unique link they've clicked through from on the email that you've sent them. So you can actually have the login skipped in those instances, which is recommended. But more on that at another date in another session. So now that we have the segmented data on our list, we've got the new form which is going to get data into our list from this point forward, or maybe we've done an import from an Excel spreadsheet or something like that, and we now have these extra fields on our list. How do I break them into segments, and how do I then send to a particular group of people in the segment? So if I jump back out here, or back out of here rather, into the contact section here, and I'll just choose one of my other lists which has many fields on it. Let's have a look at this one here. That's looking good. So you'll see here that this list has dietary already on it, and a few people have filled that in. We've got gluten-free, paleo, etc. I've got lots of information here, like the interests column has been filled in. So this kind of goes, let's say the next step, we've sort of had a few people join our list and fill in this new form since we created it. And this is where the data is now being stored, of course, in Vision 6. We've got person's state as well. All this information's here. So how do we now make segments out of this? Well, in Vision 6, segments are just basically saved searches. So if I go to the search function here on the right-hand side and press New Search, this is where I can start to build out my segments. So if one of my segments is just Queensland customers or maybe just New South Wales customers, I can come in here and choose my field. So state includes QLD. And I can just save this now as customers in Queensland. Oops, my typing is shocking. Customers in Queensland, and now save that. So if I quickly want to run that search, I go to Advanced Search, and then Queensland customers, oops, sorry. Customers in Queensland, sorry, this is one we did earlier. Click search, and there we go. We now just have our 4 Queensland customers showing up. I can, of course, build on that search as well. So you could do customers in Queensland that are gluten-free. So I'll add to it, select my second field where dietary is gluten-free. And I can keep adding to this. I could do where email contains.gov.au, and that search would just show me government customers who are gluten-free and based in Queensland. So Queensland gluten-free customers only might be my saved search. So now if I press down here and run that, Queensland gluten-free customers only, there's just one person who matches that more detailed criteria. So that's how you would then create your segments in Vision 6. They're basically just parts of a list. So I've got a big contact list with 9 people, and by using these segments, and you can make all sorts of ones and save them, that's how you would then create groups or subgroups of those people in Vision 6. Now, the final question I usually get is, okay, I've got these segments now. How do I send to just my gluten-free customers, or how do I send to just my Queensland customers? Now that I've got that data there, I can do the segmentation with the form and that kind of thing. How do I actually send to those specific groups of people? So I've got an email open here. I'll come into the send screen. As normal, this is where you go and do your email send through here. But this time down a little bit further, I'm just going to turn this off. You will see, as usual, here's the section where you choose your contacts. So who's going to receive this email? In most cases, if you're not segmenting already, you would generally just go and click on entire list, which would send to every single person on the list. In my case, that's all 9 people. However, if you've got those segments, which I showed you, you would then come into the advanced selection area. And here's where you can pull up your saved segments. So customers who are gluten-free and in Queensland only, Queensland customers only, Customers who like muffins or waffles, whatever the segments are that we saved back on that previous screen, they will appear here in the advanced selection area, and it brings up your search again, so you don't need to rebuild it. You can also build the search here and save it from this screen too, but in most cases you've probably gone and done that here already just to test them as you go through and build them. So anyone you create there also appears over here. We can then go next, and it's found just that same one person who is in Queensland and gluten-free. So if I now go done, it would now just send to that one person. So that's how to get data into the system using forms through the segmentation. That's how to save segments and search for them. And finally, we've now gone through how to send to a particular group of people as well.